FDA rejects Brexpiprazole for PTSD. Implications for treatment. The FDA's recent 10-to-1 vote against approving Brexpiprazole, Rexulti, in combination with sertraline for PTSD has sent shockwaves through the psychiatric community. It's a stark reminder of how desperately we need new treatments for this debilitating condition, and how frustratingly elusive they've been. But here's where it gets even more complicated. This isn't the first time a promising therapy has been shot down. Remember the MDMA-assisted therapy setback? It's a pattern that raises serious questions about the future of PTSD treatment. Psychiatric Times sat down with Dr. Gus Alva, medical director of ADP Clinical Research and a member of our editorial board, to dissect this controversial decision. Dr. Alva didn't mince words. 10-to-1 is probably the worst potential outcome. It's disappointing. He pointed to the mixed data from 2 phase 3 trials, 1 positive, 1 negative, and additional phase 2 analysis that left the advisory committee unconvinced. And this is the part most people miss. The committee's concern wasn't just about the conflicting results, but also about the methodology of the earlier phase 2 trial, which they felt might have been flawed. This decision highlights a grim reality. PTSD treatment has been stagnant for decades. As Dr. Alva emphasized, we haven't had a new treatment for PTSD in over a quarter of a century. SSRIs, while helpful for some, aren't a magic bullet. We desperately need alternatives. So what's next? The FDA hasn't issued its final decision yet, but Dr. Alva predicts they'll likely request another trial. This would mean significant delays and costs, a burden that may be too heavy for the drug sponsors, Otsuka and Lundbeck, to bear. Is the FDA being overly cautious, or are they right to demand more robust evidence? It's a question that sparks heated debate. While patient safety is paramount, the urgency of finding effective PTSD treatments cannot be overstated. Despite this setback, Dr. Alva remains optimistic. He recently hosted the 2025 Southern Psychiatry Conference, showcasing a wave of innovative research in psychiatry. "We're in a fluid space," he said, "with a continuous stream of new medication candidates targeting affective disorders." He believes that with ongoing research and dedication, we'll eventually find better treatment options for PTSD patients. The fight for better PTSD treatments is far from over. Psychiatric Times will continue to follow this story closely, keeping clinicians informed about the latest developments and expert analyses in this critical area. What do you think? Is the FDA's cautious approach justified, or does the urgency of PTSD treatment warrant a faster approval process? Let us know in the comments below. Pharma giant's $200 million gamble. Inside Otsuka's PTSD drug rejection. In the summer of 2025, Otsuka Holdings encountered a significant roadblock when the U.S. Food and Drug Administration's Pharmacologic Drugs Advisory Committee, PDAC, rejected the company's application to expand the use of Rexulti, Brexpiprazole, for post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD. This 10-to-1 vote against approval was a stark reminder of the FDA's stringent standards, particularly in the realm of psychiatric drug development. The decision was not taken lightly, with the committee citing discordant results from clinical trials, a term that essentially means the drug showed mixed efficacy. This was a crushing blow for Otsuka, a company that has long relied on its psychiatric drug portfolio for a significant portion of its revenue. The stakes were incredibly high for Otsuka's PTSD application. It was presented as a potential game-changer, the first new pharmacological treatment for PTSD in over 20 years. The application included data from 3 clinical trials, 2 phase 3 studies, and 1 phase 2 trial. While one phase 3 study, Study 071, showed statistically significant improvements in PTSD symptoms, another, Study 072, failed to meet its primary endpoint. The FDA was particularly critical of Study 072, calling it clearly and convincingly a negative study. The rejection by the PTSD underscores a crucial reality in psychiatric drug development. The FDA requires rigorous, consistent evidence of efficacy, especially for conditions where treatment options are limited. For Otsuka, this means the $200 million investment in Rexulti's PTSD application may yield no return in the short term. The company now faces a pivotal choice: resubmit the application with additional data, a costly and time-consuming process, or pivot to other therapeutic areas. Despite this setback, Otsuka's financials remain strong. In Q1 2025, the company reported a 12.2% increase in revenue, driven largely by its pharmaceutical segment, which saw a 16.2% growth. Key products like Abilify Maintena and Rexulti continue to be major contributors. Abilify alone generated 400 billion yen in sales in 2022, highlighting Otsuka's entrenched presence in the psychiatric market. Otsuka's diversified pipeline offers a buffer against uncertainty. The company is investing in a range of therapeutic areas, including psychiatry, cardiovascular, and oncology. As of March 2025, 12 compounds were in Phase 3 trials, covering a variety of conditions. This breadth of focus reduces reliance on any single product, mitigating the risk of a catastrophic revenue drop. However, the psychiatric drug space is fraught with challenges. Unlike oncology, where biomarkers and survival metrics provide clear endpoints, psychiatric trials rely on subjective measures like the clinician-administered PTSD scale, CAPS-5. This subjectivity increases the likelihood of mixed results, as seen in Otsuka's PTSD trials. Moreover, antipsychotics like Brexpiprazole carry long-term risks, which the FDA and advisory committees scrutinize closely. Otsuka's heavy investment in neuroscience exposes it to regulatory and market volatility. The recent rejection of MDMA-assisted therapy for PTSD in 2024 illustrates the FDA's cautious stance toward novel mental health treatments. If Otsuka's PTSD application is ultimately denied, the company could face reputational damage and investor skepticism, particularly if its pipeline lacks near-term approvals. The path forward for Otsuka is clear but challenging. The company must balance its focus on high-risk, high-reward projects like PTSD with more predictable growth areas, redirecting R&D resources toward its other late-stage candidates, such as sibeprenlimab for IgA nephropathy or ulotaront for schizophrenia, might be a smarter approach. Otsuka's collaboration model, which includes partnerships with Sumitomo Pharma, Ionis Pharmaceuticals, and Esperion Therapeutics, provides a safety net, expanding its pipeline without straining internal resources. For investors, Otsuka's situation presents both risk and opportunity. While the company's reliance on psychiatric drugs poses a long-term threat, its diversified pipeline and strong cash flow position it to weather short-term storms. The key question is whether Otsuka can balance its focus on high-risk projects with more predictable growth areas. If the company continues to overcommit to psychiatric drugs, its stock could become a volatile play. However, if it leverages its partnerships and shifts toward its more robust cardiovascular and oncology candidates, it may prove a resilient long-term holding. Otsuka's stalled PTSD application serves as a cautionary tale for pharmaceutical companies chasing blockbuster psychiatric drugs. While the company's financials and pipeline suggest it can withstand this setback, the broader lesson is clear: over-reliance on high-risk, late-stage projects in a subjective, regulatory-heavy sector is a dangerous strategy. For Otsuka, the path forward lies in balancing innovation with prudence, a challenge that will define its success in the years ahead. Investors would be wise to monitor how the company navigates this crossroads, as the outcome could shape its trajectory for decades to come. FDA rejects new PTSD treatment. Brexpiprazole-Sertraline combo fails to impress. In a major setback for the mental health community, the hope for the first new PTSD treatment in over 2 decades has been dealt a significant blow. An expert advisory panel for the U.S. Food and Drug Administration, FDA, has overwhelmingly voted against approving a combination therapy for adults struggling with post-traumatic stress disorder. The proposed treatment involved pairing the atypical antipsychotic Brexpiprazole, brand name Rejection, with the widely used antidepressant Sertraline. In a decisive 10-to-1 vote, the Psychopharmacologic Drugs Advisory Committee concluded that the available data failed to convincingly demonstrate that starting both drugs at the same time was an effective strategy for treating PTSD. So what led to such a strong rejection? The core of the issue, as highlighted by FDA reviewers in documents released before the meeting, was the wildly conflicting results from the 2 major Phase 3 clinical trials. In simple terms, these are the final, most important studies required for a drug's approval. One of these studies, labeled 071, was described as a clear success, showing a strong positive effect. However, the second study, 072, was a decisive failure, showing no statistically significant benefit for patients on any of the measured outcomes. And this is the part most people miss when a drug is rejected. Faced with this 50-50 split, the drug's manufacturer, Otsuka Pharmaceutical, tried to bolster its case by presenting data from an older, smaller Phase 2 study. But here's where the